Manners maketh man. Do you know what that means? Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to another episode of the supposedly hit, Monday Movies TV series. Is it a TV series? I've completely screwed that up, but I'll go with it because I'm desperate. Today, I'm joined as always by my good friend and fellow film lover, TGMA Productions, Tom Gibbs. Gibbsy, how are you, mate?
I'm not doing too bad, thanks, Sam. It's a bit rainy out where I live, so I've been trying to avoid the rain mostly. But apart from that, I'm doing okay.
Speaking of the rain, this is a very British film we're talking about, and seeing as we're both British, proudly so, I would say, it is Kingsman.
We are indeed. I'm so thankful that we are finally able to talk about Kingsman because it's one of my favourite films.
Yeah, blast us off into space, mate, with Kingsman, because this is a film that you love, and it's a film for me that has actually aged surprisingly well. It's 5 years old now, and I think as an action film, it just kind of gets better.
Yes, it's often seen as a James Bond spoof, which I don't think is really right for the film. But Kingsman is a fantastic tale about a young man we know as Eggsy, it's Gary Eggsy Unwin, that is about to get locked up. He's done some bad things, and he's about to get 18 months in jail. But he recalls upon a key word or a key phrase that he'd been given years ago by Galahad, who then fortunately comes and sort of takes him out of jail as his get out of free card as soon as he utters the phrase, "Oxford's not brogues."
I was just trying to remember it, and I'm glad I'm right.
Yeah, that was you would be correct. And it follows the tales of Eggsy learning the ways of the British gentleman and becoming a member of Kingsman, the Secret Service.
And let's go back to the beginning of what you just said, because you rightly said it's not necessarily a spoof of James Bond, but I would almost consider it in, maybe to a lesser extent, but in at least the same category as something like Austin Powers, in that it is very much aware of itself and what it's not taking the mick out of, but almost what it's satirising. Because I would argue Kingsman is one of those films that is quite tongue-in-cheek in its execution, because it takes itself seriously enough, but there's a slight element of kind of corniness to it and cheese that actually makes it kind of funny. I mean, it's so ludicrous, isn't it? They've got underground bunkers, they've got train tunnels that go right through underneath the city. It's absolutely bonkers, and just the concept of Kingsman in itself, it is so ridiculous, but I think because of its execution it works, and it is a very funny film.
I enjoy it. I enjoy it so much. I can't tell you the amount of times I've seen it.
How many times?
Good question. Good question. I wouldn't be able to tell you, honestly. I've watched it countless times at this point.
Well, what stands out for you then on rewatch? Because I've only seen it maybe 3 or 4 times. Because I watched it in cinemas. I loved it. I rewatched it again on Blu-ray, and somehow it was better. But what stands out for you on rewatch?
The thing about Kingsman that really stands out from me, and particularly from other spy-related movies, has got to be the fight scenes and the choreography.
Yes.
They are probably some of the best I've seen in modern film. There's something so pleasing about the way that the camera follows the two main characters that are in the fight frame of the fight at that particular moment, and how it just pans around and you get a view of every single thing that's taking place, whether it's the very first one that you get in the pub, or whether it's the iconic one from in the church later on in the film. Fantastic. Every single frame I love for each of those scenes.
And you've kind of identified there that it has a real style to it, maybe more so than most action films. I mean, it's not quite Mad Max Fury Road or Dread, but I think as an action film, it really does get the style right. And yeah, you're right, especially in the choreography. I can only imagine how much of a pain in the arse it was to film this movie. Because Matthew Vaughn, as a director, he also made X-Men First Class and Layer Cake and many, many other films. He's British as well, so he comes from a very British background, and you can sense it in here. And I love as well that it is not a celebration of kind of British and English life, but it's just presenting it as if it's normality. And, Eggsy, as you've already said, is such a great character, and he's introduced as kind of a thug. He's wayward, he's not quite there on the path to success in his life, and eventually it's almost a film like Star Wars in that he's discovering his destiny, isn't he?
Yeah, I really love how Kingsman This is speaking as a Brit here now. I'm into British mode, but I really love A, how the UK is represented in this film, and B, how the film explores British culture and how it explores. You've got at the beginning of the film where Eggsy comes from, his background, when he lives with his mum and his stepdad, and the roughness of the situation and the aggression between Eggsy's friends and that group of thugs that are sort of responding up to his stepdad and sort of answer to him. You get a view of the tension there and how that passively builds throughout the film. But you've also got moments like, he's nicked my fucking car,
There's some beautiful swearing in this movie.
Yeah, there is quite a bit of language, but it's all, none of it's just blindly swearing. It's all swearing for effect and for good reason.
I would argue as well that there is a brilliant use of location in this film as well, because the kind of confinedness, the claustrophobia of where he's living as well is not only in a flat of where domestic abuse is happening, but it's in a very small room in a very small, well, London's obviously big, I'm not going to pretend London is a small place, but it's kind of that terrace house estate, not to be judgmental, but kind of lower class area, isn't it? So it's got a real roughness to it, and so I think that kind of use of setting completely contrasts the Kingsman place later on. So it's very intentional and it's very well done. So the setting is as much of a character as the characters themselves.
Yes. Another thing I really like about how I'm a music man at heart, and so I picked up specifically a few things about the music. I noticed that for whichever location the scene was being filmed in for a film, so if a scene takes place in the United Kingdom, music that's used and that's credited, so like Bonkers that was used in the beginning, Feel the Love by Rudimental in the club, they're all British artists that are used during the scenes filmed in the UK.
I didn't realise that.
Then when you go over to America and you've got the church scene, you've got Freebird that comes on by Leonard Skinner.
Oh, yes, of course.
It's an American band, which I thought was very interesting use of, local music, if you will, from the scenes where the scenes that have been shot from. I picked up on that after I'd watched the film for podcast, but I thought that's actually a very clever use. Yeah,
very clever use. What do you think of the use of Henry Jackman's score as well? Because I think if you take out that classic kind of it loses actually quite a lot of it, to be honest.
Yeah, the Kingsman score I do enjoy. I enjoyed it very much when watching the film over and over again. You got that classic motif that's used quite a lot throughout the film.
Yeah, it's recurring.
But I love how it's used quite a lot, but throughout the different scenes and throughout the different moods that are being created in each of the scenes, the motif is used in a slightly different way to emphasize feelings of perhaps sadness or like the cool action scenes that are being filmed, and with the fight scenes, for example, same motifs are used in there, but a different style.
Yeah, exactly. We need to get back to the action of the film as well, because as much as it is a brilliantly written story, it is an action movie as well. And I think the scene that blew me away actually in the cinema when I watched it for the first time is probably the skydive sequence. Because there's like, as you were mentioning about score, there's this pulsating rhythm to it that builds and builds and builds, and as Eggsy and Roxy jump out together, which is such a fun scene, such a fun little moment to that scene. They actually were able to get real stuntmen to do that scene and CGI the faces of the actors onto those stuntmen in post-production, and you would never tell. You would never notice. Did you notice that at all? Did the faces look fake to you, Gibbsy?
No, not in the slightest, I will admit.
Isn't that amazing?
Indeed. Now that you say that, thinking about it, if that was done, as you say, that's fantastic work. But there were a couple of I wanted to talk briefly about Valentine, because Valentine really interested me, and his motivation throughout the film, which you see originally as he's marketing his brand new SIM card that is created, which supposedly gives everyone in the world that picks one up unlimited access to the internet and communications, which is a fantastic idea.
I can understand what his point is. You know, he's an environmentalist to some extent, isn't he? It's a completely extremist viewpoint, but there's a logic to it, and that's what actually makes him quite an entertaining villain and a scary villain, actually.
It makes you wonder, is he even the villain for what
Who
he's trying
knows?
to do?
And that's what makes great character writing, and that perfectly segues us into a scene we've got to talk about in great detail, and that is when he turns up the dial, and next minute you know, shit got real in the church, didn't it?
Oh yes, the church scene.
Brilliant. Maybe the scene of the film. Would you agree?
I'd say it's definitely within the top 3 for sure. With what is one shot, I believe it's one shot at least.
Sorry to interrupt you, Gibbsy. What they've done is film many different shots, but they've managed to use hidden cuts to make it look as if it's one shot. So once again, it's very cleverly done, and you actually thought it was one shot.
Hey, you see, I've been bamboozled again.
Kingsman got you twice. Kingsman got you twice. But yeah, that's a brilliant example of filmmaking, but it doesn't feel gratuitous at all as a stylistic choice. It just makes it more effective because you are really immersed in that action scene. And I say as a follower of Christ as well, that regardless of what stance they're taking in terms of the fundamentalist angle to it, it just works as a scene. I don't think you have to be of a particular stance at all. You can just be completely immersed in that scene, and it's actually kind of funny. If you do not laugh during that scene, I don't know what's going on.
How close the camera brings you to the action is truly incredible. I mentioned earlier briefly about the choreography, but getting that many people together to film that one scene, with all of them fighting in the way that they do, must have been a proper pain to get perfect. But they've managed to do it.
It works, and by the end of the film, I definitely feel as if Eggsy, maybe Roxy to a lesser extent, but Eggsy definitely becomes a different man, doesn't he? And I'd maybe argue, in terms of flaws, I would have liked to have seen maybe a bit more, not charisma, but kind of chemistry between Eggsy and Roxy, because it is there, but I feel like it kind of gets pushed to the side ever so slightly in service of the plot. Where do you stand on that?
You can definitely see it start to build between them, even just from the very first moment where the two of them are in the sleeping quarters, where they meet for the first time and they start to connect even then. But as you said, it does gradually develop throughout the film, and it would have been nice to have seen that go a lot further. But as you get to the end, when Roxy's once again facing her fear of heights, you've got Eggsy there giving her the courage that she needs to do what is probably a monumental task. No, don't get me wrong. But the support that they're willing to show for each other at that point is truly incredible.
Absolutely, yeah, it's a nice friendship. That's my only real issue with the film, is that I wish I'd seen more of them together, and that's about it. Because by the end of it, Gibbsy, I'm sure you'd agree that in no pretentious way at all, Kingsman, by the end, becomes a film about not only embracing your destiny, but being able to escape the trappings of classism.
That's a good point, actually, that you mentioned.
And you briefly mentioned Valentine as well, and I think if there is one note to end on that I'd like to finish on, is that it does the very clever thing of having young, new actors in the leading roles, but it manages to balance that with a lot of underpinning supporting characters who are played by brilliant British actors like Colin Firth and Mark Strong, and maybe not British, but Sam Jackson. The list just goes on. It's such a strong cast. I wouldn't actually say there's a weak link.
No, even with Mark Hamill coming in very early on in the film, I thought that was an excellent cameo.
Dude, I forgot about that, because interesting story, in the actual book, The Secret Service, Mark Hamill is actually the character who appears in that opening few scenes.
Oh, is he really?
Yeah, so they actually made that happen from the comic book, which I think is lovely.
That's excellent.
But yeah, that brings an end to our episode on Kingsman. Gibbsy, in a few final words, where do you stand on the film?
Where do I stand on the film? Kingsman, excellent film. It's quite long compared to others that I have seen, but still definitely worth your time if you can view it. I believe it's available on Netflix streaming service. Don't know about Amazon Prime because I don't have it. But definitely give it a watch. Very entertaining, a very good story. I would happily watch it again to make another countless times plus one that I've seen the film.
So guys, that is our episode. Thank you very much for watching. Let us know what you think of Kingsman, the Secret Service, not the Secret Service Kingsman, based on the Mark Miller book. Let us know in the comment section below because it does warrant a very long discussion. Gibbsy, where can we find you?
So I'm most active nowadays on my YouTube channel. I do music and audio related stuff on there, whether it's my own compositions or whether it's just uploading music. And of course, you can find the Monday Movies episodes on my channel as well. I'm sure Stan will put a link in the description of this video, as will I. I also am active every now and then on Twitter, promoting Monday Movies here and where I can.
Awesome. Check them out, guys. You can find me at Twitter at Stand Wilks 10. You can also check out the previous Monday Movies episodes on my end of the channel as well, if you like. I've also got some music and some short films, and because of the new intro, check it out. The new theme. It's got its own little video as well. I might even put a link in the description.
Oh, very nice.
Excellent. Guys, thank you very much for your time, and we shall see you in the next episode.
Indeed. Take care, everybody.